Hello, Joe here from Infiniti of Tacoma. Today I'm going to tell you about this beautiful 2020 Ford Mustang GT. This is a clean Carfax one-owner vehicle. Only 4,754 miles at the time of making this video, so it's pretty close to new condition. So if you're having a hard time finding a brand new one, I know new cars are kind of tight right now with the semiconductor shortage. Maybe this one might work for you. This one's in great shape as I mentioned, and man, what an awesome vehicle. For me, Mustangs have a very special place in my heart because when I graduated high school, I graduated in '99, but back then, when I was in high school, if you had a GT Mustang, specifically back then, you know, it was the Fox body Mustangs, you know, the 80s, early 90s Mustangs. Those were the coolest ones to have. Very crude by today's standards of Mustangs, but you know, that's kind of just one of those vehicles that's always had a place in my heart, and one of these days I'd like to own one. Maybe you kind of feel like that. Maybe when you were in high school you couldn't afford to have a Mustang, but now you can. And what better way to make that dream come true than this beautiful GT? And in 2020, they're doing some magical things. If I could only have saw into the future back in the 90s of what they would be doing with Mustangs in the 2020s, this GT pumps out 460 horsepower. That's just mind-boggling. Back then, I was drooling over the Dodge Viper with 400 horsepower, and that was, you know, a very exotic vehicle back then. Mustangs aren't quite exotic, and they're a lot more easily accessible than Vipers were back in the day. 460 horsepower is a lot of power. And when I do reviews of like the EcoBoost, which is a fantastic Mustang, a Turbo 4, a little over 300 horsepower, those perform better than a lot of the Mustangs from the 90s. In fact, the EcoBoost make more horsepower than the SVT Cobra, I think in 1996. But the one thing that the EcoBoost does, and aside from it not making as much horsepower as a V8, they don't sound like this. There's some beautiful sounds coming out of that quad tip exhaust in the back of this Mustang, and that's part of the magic of a GT Mustang is a V8. And nothing really sounds too much better as far as engines go than a V8. You could argue maybe there's some, you know, Lamborghini and Ferrari V10s and V12s that sound pretty good. Well, you have to pay a lot of money for those. But for more accessible performance cars, for me, you know, it's all personal preference, but really nothing sounds quite as good as a nice V8 engine, and the Mustang has an amazing one. 10-speed automatic. I'm a manual transmission enthusiast. I love manual gearboxes, and you can get this as a 6-speed manual, but with 10 speeds you have 4 extra cogs than the 6 speeds. So as far as I know, the 10 speed is actually going to offer better performance and better fuel efficiency than the manual transmission. And you still have a steering wheel paddle shifter, so you can change gears. The way the programming of this transmission, especially in sport mode, it can tell when you're driving fast, so it won't upshift. It does a really good job reading your mind in sport mode. So some might want a 6-speed, but try out the 10-speed. You might be impressed. Keyless ignition with push-button start. Pretty straightforward, simple cockpit. We also have a little backup camera there. Parking sensors. This one's in a beautiful color combination in black on black. I mean, I think I'll have a hard time finding a mark on this one of a little over 4,000 miles. As I mentioned, it's pretty close to new condition. We have lots of great promotions going around. Complimentary delivery up to 250 miles. Usually you can get the vehicle to you within 24 to 48 hours. Contact us for more information about our mobile delivery service. And if you live a little bit further away, we ship cars all over the country, so we can get this shipped just about anywhere. And contact us for more details about that. We can tell you about getting a shipping quote. We can get you a shipping quote and paperwork and sales taxes and stuff like that. Generally, you're going to pay sales tax where you live if applicable, just as long as you don't have a Washington state license or a second residence here. That's generally the way that works. Have some massive brakes on the Mustang as well. With 460 horsepower, you have to have good stopping power. And a beautiful curvaceous body. This really is a revolutionary Mustang. This Mustang generation, I think it was 14 or 15 when it first arrived, and they made some pretty big departures versus the ways they used to make some of the older Mustangs, aside from, like, you know, some special SVT Cobras and stuff like that. But for a long time, the Mustang had a solid rear axle, which was okay for straight line performance, but it really didn't make it a great handler as it could be. But when they redesigned the Mustang, I think it was 2014 or 15, it had an independent rear suspension. It also allows it to squat down a little bit lower. That really made it a much better handling vehicle. And since then, they've facelifted it and have made even more improvements, like adding that 10-speed automatic transmission. And there is the grand finale. That beautiful 460 horsepower 5-liter V8 sounds amazing, offers amazing amounts of horsepower and thrust. Thanks so much for taking the time today to watch this video. Hopefully we see you soon, and have a wonderful day.